back. The gentlelady from Indiana, Ms. Spartz, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Cantor, for being here today. We talk a lot about, monopoly, oligopoly problems, and you talk about individual liberties. But we do have a serious problem in every sector of the market with oligopoly, monopoly problem, whether it's healthcare, whether it's agriculture, whether big tech. And there are things that you take in tough cases, and I actually appreciate that you're willing to take tough cases. I actually had some agreements, even on bipartisan basis, to adjust our legal framework. Yeah. We cannot just allow companies to have unlimited immunities. We cannot allow companies not to have proper accountability and protection of property rights, including data protection, because that's become a new type of property, and we didn't define them. We do have challenges with consumer welfare standard, which maybe need to be defined a little bit more broadly and everything else. But don't you believe, we pass a lot of different laws, but in reality, you're treating the symptoms, but it seems like a lot of your cases, you get dismissed or have weak evidence, you're really treating the symptoms. But unless we start looking at the causes, we passed Dodd-Frank for too big to fail. Our institutions became even bigger. So don't we need to start looking at barriers of entry and barriers to market competition of entry?
So absolutely. When we deal with monopolization concerns, we need to go make sure that we're focused on core monopolies and core considerations or conditions that, if they violate the law, sustain monopoly or oligopoly positions. And so we've undertaken that effort in our investigations.
But you can do only symptoms. The barriers of entry that we create in a lot of ways, either through USDA regulation, either through bills, you cannot deal with that. Is that correct?
Well, we are a law enforcement
You
authority.
cannot come after USDA, right? So we are the only people who can, right, enforce if our agency creates barrier of entry. Is that correct?
So again, we are focused. I have a very narrow job, is to enforce the antitrust laws as written by Congress.
Right. So I think the challenge is you will not be able to deal with this, and it's become very ineffective. We have oligopoly problems in every sector of the market. Is that correct?
Well, I think we have...
In most.
In many markets, there are monopolies and oligopolies. I do believe that antitrust enforcement can be an effective tool, and when the facts and the law support it, to help promote competition. You can't have a functioning marketplace without market participants.
Right. And so generally, barriers of entry, if we don't have new entries too, that causes significant problems. Is that correct?
There can be many causes to barriers of entry, yes.
Right. So, and a lot of them are legislative.
I will defer to Congress regarding legislation. Again, I'm focused on anti-competitive conduct that violates the law.
So what are your thoughts about the consumer welfare standard? What are your thoughts about that?
So as I indicated before, I think if you ask 5 antitrust lawyers, what does the consumer welfare standard mean? You often get 6 different answers. It's difficult to have a standard if there's no broad-based agreement as to what it means. The welfare of consumers is an important objective. It's an essential objective for the antitrust laws, but so is the welfare of workers, so is the welfare of innovators. But it's probably,
in some cases, it's more just than price, correct?
It's absolutely more than price.
Right, but it's very difficult to argue in any other cases, if it's not a price. It's becoming much more difficult because precedent has been just a price issue. Is that correct?
Well, I think we have an obligation to make sure that we are bringing cases to courts that present issues in the way they appear in the marketplace. And sometimes that will be in the form of higher prices, but sometimes that might be in the form of less innovation or harm to, for example, the marketplace of ideas.
Yeah, access. One more question. So we had a kind of discussion, and it's a very convoluted process, your relationship with FTC and DOJ. If you would literally look to restructure that process, because it's very strange how it's set up, how would you do that to make it more efficient antitrust enforcement?
If you beg my indulgence, I think my kids would answer that by saying, new phone, who dis? So I think ultimately it's up to Congress to create institutions and determine how those institutions and what their authorities are. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I've got a job, which is to be an antitrust enforcer at the Department of Justice, and I will focus on doing that job to the best of my ability and with the trust of the
So
public.
do you believe you efficiently set up your agency as you're in charge of your division? Is your division set up as efficient as it can be, or there are some improvements in your division that we should address for your division specifically?
Yeah, there are always improvements.
But can you state some?
Yeah, we've for example, we've looked to make our information more accessible to the public, to change the language of antitrust. We've opened investigations that focused on labor effects. We have created organizational streamlining to make sure that processes are more efficient and decisions can be made more expeditiously, but with the same level of protections and oversight. We are constantly making sure that we are evaluating how we run our divisions so that we can deliver the best results for the public as efficiently and as inexpensively as possible.
Thank you. My time expired. Back.